here from Rain Country Homestead. God is good all the time. And for dinner tonight, I am making almond fried chicken, and this is my own recipe. Now, what I am using is the chicken broth and the chicken from the one that I roasted in the solar oven the other day. So I'm starting with cooked chicken. Traditionally, almond fried chicken is made using raw chicken pieces. However, I have found for several reasons I prefer using the cooked chicken. And one is that it seems to just turn out more tender. I don't have to worry about whether or not it gets cooked all the way through. And plus, it's just another thing I can do with the leftover chicken that I've roasted, whether it be on the wood stove or in my solar oven. So let's get to this and I'll show you how I do it. What I have here is 2 cups of the broth from the chicken I roasted. And if you can see those little pieces floating in there, I added about a tablespoon or more of chia seed and flax seed, mostly for the sake of the health benefits. And I just kind of let them soak in there for a few minutes. And also because it will help this thicken up the sauce. So this is what we're starting with, is the sauce itself. And so I'm going to pour this in here in my pan. And now I'm going to add another 2 cups of filtered rainwater. I want to get this so I have about 4 cups total of broth. Now to this, what I have here is my organic tapioca starch. You can find a link to where I get this below. Another one you can use is the arrowroot powder. I just highly recommend that you stay away from cornstarch unless you know it is non-GMO and organic. About a 1/4 cup is all you need. So I just fill my lid up about halfway. And that's going to be plenty, especially with the seed in there already. And so you just want to blend that really well. Make sure there's no chunks left in there. And it's usually pretty simple. You can see that. Nicely blended. Really what you need to add to this for really good flavor is green onions, especially fresh green onions, and you'll put that in later. However, I never seem to have green onions on hand when I'm doing stuff like this. So what I'm going to do is put in a bunch of dehydrated onion. That's about a 1/4 cup. But it is much better with your green onion, so I recommend you do that. My old recipe called for soy sauce, which eventually I switched to the Bragg's liquid aminos, which I'll still use until they're gone. But I discovered the coconut aminos thanks to one of my followers. And I'm going to use these in here since we're trying to get away from soy products. And if you're using soy sauce, you're going to do 2 tablespoons. I got 2 bottles out because I wasn't sure how much was left in here. So I've got 2 tablespoons. Now, normally I would not add salt. I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of this bottle because there's not much left. Okay. But since the coconut aminos aren't near as salty as your soy sauce, I'm going to go ahead and put in about a teaspoon of salt. This is the pink Himalayan salt. Okay, and then about a tablespoon of granulated garlic. You can also use fresh garlic. Granulated garlic is just handy for me. I still have a lot of my fermented garlic that I should have chopped up and put in here. You'll want some sesame oil, at least a tablespoon of that, because you're going to really want that good sesame flavor in there. You can also add sesame seeds to this. So the sesame oil is for the flavor. Now, next things are options. For me, I'm always adding my mixed greens blend to pretty much everything I cook. So this I add in here for the sake of the health benefits. And this has just all kinds of goodness in it, from dandelion leaves to radicchio, kale to beet greens, strawberry leaves and grape leaves and stinging nettle. It's just a whole bunch of different greens in there, and it's just a way we can get a little bit more nutrition into our diet. So it's just a really good way to sneak this stuff into your foods. If you don't like the taste of some of the stuff, once it's dehydrated, the taste is definitely more mild. Like, say, dandelion leaves can be bitter, but it's dehydrated, you can't even taste it. Obviously, if you get too much, you can taste it, but you can see how much I added. Sort of see what that looks like. And you really don't even notice the flavor. And now, normally I'd put in about a tablespoon of red pepper flakes, but since I'm using this really great pepper that I'm hooked on now that I got from one of my subscribers, homegrown peppers. Let's see all that red and green. And you got to go a little lighter on this. It's very spicy, but I'm addicted to this stuff. I'm loving it so much, and I'm so grateful. What a wonderful gift. And because it's so spicy, the nice thing is it'll last me, it'll go a lot farther than red pepper flakes. That was probably about a teaspoon of that, I'm guessing. Now, another thing I will add when this is cooked and good and thick is a cup of, you can use slivered or sliced almonds. I like to wait until towards the end because I don't like to overcook the almonds. I want to keep them as raw as possible. Mostly, I just add them to heat through so they can get warm. So what I'm going to do is I can use either my hot plate or my wood stove. I have a fire going right now and it's kind of a dreary day. I'm just going to go ahead and put this on the wood stove and let it start thickening up. Now we're going to get on to making the batter for the chicken. So what I have in here is just a little better, because I always like to be generous, than a tablespoon of baking powder. I'm not going to be adding salt to this. I'm going to be using, again, my tapioca starch. Again, arrowroot powder will also work. And I'm using a whole cup, a cup of the starch, whether it be arrowroot powder or tapioca. And then 1 cup of rice flour. Now you can use regular white flour if you want. I prefer to use rice flour, and plus this will make it a gluten-free recipe for those of you who cannot have gluten. Now, next I'm going to use 3 eggs. So I'm going to make a little well in here, a little. Put some water in this measuring cup here, and you're going to start with about a tablespoon at a time of water and just start kind of blending it in to your flour mixture, your dry ingredients. And just kind of add the water as you think you need it. You just kind of decide how thick you want it. So now I'm going to finish blending this in and see how thick this is turning out. Typically you're going to need about a 1/4 cup to a 1/3 cup, possibly more. It also just depends on how thick you want it. You want it thick enough that it's going to coat your chicken really well. So I definitely need more. It's probably going to be more like 1/2 cup of water. Okay, so that's a fairly good consistency right there. I could go just a little bit thinner, but I think I'm going to leave that for now. What I like to do is take my pre-cooked pieces of chicken, and if they're bigger pieces like this, and I'll throw them in like that. I like to keep them kind of more on the smaller side rather than how you might find them in a restaurant. You know, in the restaurant they'll take like chicken breast and they'll cut it like this. I like to have all of my pieces coated pretty evenly. And so if they're already about that size, I'll just throw the chunks of meat in there and just mix this in. I just pretty much took most of the chicken meat that was left off of that chicken. I'm going to add a little bit more water in here. I should have done that first. I should have checked to see, because a lot of times when you let the batter sit, it will thicken up even more. So I should have checked it before I added the chicken. That's all right. It still mixes in okay. That's a pretty good consistency. And some of this will chunk up, you know, will fall apart and flake because it's not raw, it's cooked. This is not one of the reasons why you're supposed to do it raw, because it's going to hold together better. But I like having all these little tiny pieces, so you get a lot of this just because the breading is what makes it so good. Getting it good and crispy all the way around. That's my favorite part of almond chicken. That and then of course the gravy over the top. So I'm just going to leave that and let it sit until I'm ready to start frying it up. And I'm going to go check my gravy and see how it's doing, and I'll get back to you in a bit. Got my skillet filled with coconut oil. I'm just doing a test bit of the batter to see if the oil is hot enough. I'm going to do this part on my Nesco hot plate, which is plugged into my solar. So that's why I have this thing sitting here on top of my range. My range hardly ever gets used, this beautiful glass top range, anymore, because in the winter time when I have fires, which I have a fire going now, but I'd rather video this in here because the light is much better. So I can use both right now because I'm getting both good solar power, and I've got the wood stove going hot. But anyway, summertime I do all my cooking, like stovetop type cooking, on my Nesco. I have several of these hot plates. This time of year I just have one. I'll be pulling out a second one once we get to the point where I'm not having any fires going in the wood stove. We burn fires here about at least 9 months out of the year. Anyway, so now I'm going to start dropping that in there now that it looks good and hot. I'm going to go ahead and turn that down a little bit. It's probably more hot than it needs to be. And I'm only going to cook up a little bit right now just so you can see it, because I got a long time before Mr. Rain's going to be home for dinner. But I wanted to get this video made, so I thought I'd cook up a little bit now just so you can see what it looks like. So you're just wanting it to get good and golden brown. And this is another reason why I like using the cooked meat, because I can set the heat pretty high, and so I can make sure the batter gets real brown. It's probably a little bit high. Look at that. It's just a little too dark. Whoops. So there we go. These are some really good colors there. I'll do just a couple more. And then typically what I'll find is I'll have to keep adding some more coconut oil as I go, because I've got a lot more chicken to cook, and that's more than we'll eat. But leftovers, my son will help us out with that. We'll have another meal maybe with the same thing another night. But yeah, that color right there, that looks really good. That one there, that's a nice good color. Personally, we don't mind them just a little more dark, like these ones here, these first ones I did. All right, my sauce is pretty well thickened. Now it's not super thick. You can make it thicker if you want, but you gotta understand too, when it cools, it's gonna thicken up a little bit more. So it depends on how hot you're gonna eat it. But I'm gonna go ahead and add my almonds to this now. I'm just serving up a sample plate so you can see how it looks. I'm gonna try to remember to get a picture of, you know, the plate with the rice and the green beans on there. Anyway, you're just gonna take your gravy and you're just gonna pour it right over your chicken. And then it's ready to eat, just like that. So there you have it. That's how I make my almond fried chicken. Again, green onions are excellent on this. So if you remember to get some green onions on hand, you can either sprinkle them over the top so they're more fresh, or you can cook them into your gravy. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something new. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.